Hey everybody, this is Dan from Mechanical Malarkey. Today I'm going to be talking about all the different kinds of fluids that cars use. Let's start off with the most commonly known fluid, engine oil. Engine oil lubricates everything in the engine and keeps everything running smoothly, and it also traps contaminants and aids in cooling. The main types of engine oil are conventional, semi-synthetic, and full synthetic. Conventional is usually the cheapest, and synthetic can get really expensive depending on the brand. Despite the name full synthetic, synthetic oil is actually also derived from crude oil, it's just modified more than conventional oil is. Most newer cars are designed to run on synthetic oil specifically. Older cars usually use conventional, but you can use synthetic if you want to. Synthetic oil performs better under extreme conditions, and it can last longer. Most oils contain various additives to help prolong engine life. All oils have a viscosity rating on them. This oil is 10W40. The first number with a W is the winter weight or cold weight. A lower number means that the oil flows faster. Years ago, oils were singular weight, but nowadays they all have a winter weight so that they flow better when they're cold, which helps with cold engine startup in the winter. Overall, oil viscosities have been getting lower because lower viscosity oil moves easier, so there's less friction and the engines are more efficient. Some cars still use oil like this 10W40, but a lot use 0W20 like this. The lowest I've seen so far is actually 0W16. 5W30 was a common oil for a while, then 520, and now 020. The distance between oil changes varies depending on the manufacturer's recommendations. The old common amount was 3,000 miles, but that's usually not needed nowadays with how good oil and oil filters are. A lot of manufacturers recommend 5,000, but some are 7,500 or even 10,000 miles between changes. This is what brand new oil looks like. Most new oils look pretty similar. It's pretty clear, just a bit of a tan color like this. And this is oil that was in a car for about 8,000 miles. As you can see, it's a lot dirtier than the brand new oil. The used oil is much darker because it's gone through a lot of heat from the combustion process, plus all the contaminants that it picks up. This is why you need to change your oil. Now let's move past the engine to the transmission. We'll start with automatic transmissions. Automatic transmission replacement intervals vary a lot depending on the manufacturer, so definitely check in your owner's manual to see how often you should be changing your fluid. Like engine oil, automatic transmission fluid degrades over time and it traps contaminants, so you always need to replace it once in a while. It's important to make sure you get the right kind of transmission fluid. And you see here, this says multi-vehicle ATF, which sounds pretty universal, but it isn't necessarily. A lot of vehicles use fluids that meet certain requirements like Dexron 3 or Dexron 4 or Mercon, which is what this one says. It has Dexron and Mercon. But not all cars will necessarily work right with this fluid. I would always recommend, when possible, to use OEM fluid like this Honda ATF DW1, which is used in most of their automatic transmissions. A lot of ATF is red color like this, and it usually has a bit of a sweet smell to it. So a lot of times when I'm filling it up, it makes me think of strawberry soda. Very similar color. I have a couple samples of used fluid that I took out of cars. This is fluid with only 15,000 miles on it, which is a little soon to be changing it. But as you can see, it's already picked up a good bit of dirt. It's gotten a lot darker than the new fluid. This car had 72,000 miles on it when I changed the fluid. As far as I know, it had never been changed before that. This car we had no previous history on, and it had 143,000 miles on, so I don't know if this is the original fluid or not. As you can see, there's not that much of a visible difference between these different ages of fluid, which means when you drain out the fluid, you can't necessarily tell how old it is. You should definitely replace it when the manufacturer recommends. make sure you drink the right cup. One transmission you definitely want to get the OEM fluid for is the Honda 9-speed automatic transmissions. This is not your typical automatic transmission fluid. This is Honda ATF 3.1. Weird thing is it says shake well before using, which doesn't make sense when it's already in the car because I can't shake my car before I start it. This fluid is not red. This is a dark green kind of color, and it smells a lot different from regular ATF. This is also about 50 bucks a quart. The other common type of transmission these days is continuously variable transmissions. These I would also highly recommend getting the manufacturer-specific OEM fluid for, because different brands may need different types of fluid. This is Honda HCF2 fluid. As you can see, it's another light brown, pretty clear fluid. It's not that much different looking from engine oil, but definitely not the same thing. And definitely do not put automatic transmission fluid in your CVT. You need to replace your CVT fluid just like you do with your automatic transmission fluid. Check your owner's manual to find out when you should. This is the exact same brand of fluid, but with 50,000 miles on it. So you can see, just like all the other fluids, it's gotten a lot darker and dirtier over that time. Most manual transmissions use some form of gear oil, which is often the same as what is used in most rear differentials. As you can see, this is 80W90 gear oil, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it is that much thicker than engine oil, because they use a different scale. It looks very similar to engine oil. Like all fluids, you need to make sure you have the right type. Some of them need limited slip differential oil if they're a limited slip rear differential, or there might be an additive that you have to put in along with the fluid. Hondas don't use normal gear oil for their rear differentials. Most of them use their Honda dual pump fluid. You can see this is another pinkish fluid. It's not quite as bright red as ATF is. This is dual pump fluid with 30,000 miles on it. As you can see, you need to replace it regularly, just like everything else. Other Hondas use VTM4 fluid, which also looks similar to ATF, but I wouldn't try to use ATF in my rear differential. Moving away from the drivetrain of the car, let's go to the brake fluid. There are a couple different standards of brake fluids called DOT3, DOT4, and DOT5. Most cars take DOT3 or DOT4, and usually you can put DOT4 into a car with DOT3. It's not a good idea to spill most fluids onto your car, but brake fluid especially will destroy your paint. This is DOT4 fluid, and it's a pretty clear yellow fluid. Just make sure you use whatever fluid is indicated on your brake fluid reservoir cap. Brake fluid is very important to replace regularly every few years because brake fluid is hygroscopic, which means it actually absorbs water. So over time it degrades a lot. This is used brake fluid that's probably a few years old. See, it is a lot darker, and as it absorbs more water, it's more likely that it might boil when your brakes get really hot. This is why you need to replace it every couple of years. Usually around 3 years is a good general benchmark. Most clutch systems also use brake fluid because they're a similar, simple hydraulic system. Most new cars have electric power steering, but before that it was all hydraulic. It's often a fluid that people neglect and don't change very often, but if you have a power steering pump failure or a steering rack gearbox failure, you should definitely flush out the system because there might be debris in there. Basically another form of hydraulic fluid like brake fluid, and it looks pretty similar as well. Even though this just says power steering fluid and doesn't say that it's for any specific vehicles, this isn't necessarily universal. Different cars, especially Hondas, need a different fluid than what this typical fluid is. Others require special synthetic fluids. So make sure you get the right type for your vehicle. Next we'll move to the engine cooling system. Coolant contains antifreeze. When you buy it, make sure you know whether you're getting concentrate or pre-mixed. This says must add water, which means it's concentrate, which means you need to mix it 50-50 with water. It's usually best to use distilled water so you don't get any minerals in your system. This coolant says it's universal and can be used with any car with any color coolant, but it can be a good idea to get a type that is specific for your brand of vehicle. Antifreeze is poisonous, usually contains ethylene glycol, so there's usually a child-resistant cap, and you don't want to leave an open container of this lying around or an open drain pan or anything, because it's usually sweet smelling, and so it may attract animals like cats or dogs. Then they'll drink a bit and they'll die. There are many different colors: red, yellow, blue, pink. Honda coolant is blue. If you needed to top off your Honda's blue coolant, it wouldn't necessarily be bad to use this, but it would probably be better to get some Honda coolant. Coolant needs to be changed periodically as well. It usually can last longer, sometimes 100,000 miles, before you need to replace it. Unless you're really in a bind on the side of the road, you shouldn't just add straight water to your cooling system, because in cold weather it'll freeze and it can crack your entire engine block. Most coolant can protect down to -30 degrees Fahrenheit. The last fluid we'll look at today is probably the easiest fluid for you to add to your car. Windshield washer fluid is actually very similar to coolant in that it has an antifreeze in it, but you shouldn't interchange them. This usually evaporates quickly, whereas you don't want your coolant to evaporate quickly. I didn't really need to pour it because you can see it through the jug, but you can see this is a light blue. I've seen many different colors of windshield washer fluid. I've seen orange, I've seen purple, I've seen green. Most often I see blue. Now obviously, windshield washer fluid is not a fluid that you need to change. All you have to do is fill it up when you've used it. Because it contains antifreeze, this is also poisonous. The thing that's funny to me is on some containers of washer fluid, I've seen it say, do not release into the environment. But that's literally what you do when you spray it on your windshield. Two fluids I almost forgot. I think outside of filling up a lawnmower, most people never actually see gasoline because the nozzle goes into the filler neck and you don't actually see the gas going in. So gasoline is pretty clear, just a slight tinge of yellow to it. If I'm showing you gasoline, I need to show you diesel too. I know this isn't the right color for a diesel container, but I couldn't find any 1-gallon diesel containers. Looks very similar, just a little bit of a brighter, greener color. So if you ever wondered what gasoline and diesel look like, there you go. So there you go, a lot of information about automotive fluids. If you're trying to figure out what that spot was in your driveway, maybe this will help. Make sure you watch my next video to see a fun test I do with these. I hope you liked the video. If you did, please like, comment, subscribe to the channel, follow me on social media, on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and read the blog at mechanicalmalarkey.com. Thanks for watching.